Half-lotus can be a very challenging posture for many people. When Julian first got to India many years ago, half-lotus wasn't possible. And Sharat spent a lot of time working with him, just sitting on his mat and literally helping him work into the posture. For Julian, if he worked in the traditional way, which many people do, just taking the foot and kind of receiving it and bringing it in, the sensation would go right to his knee, and it was quite uncomfortable. So he needed to come up with an alternative way to really access the hip joint, which is really what we're trying to do in half-lotus, is to work into that nice external rotation of the hip. So Julian's going to show the way that he works into half-lotus, and perhaps you can show it first, and then I'll break it down and kind of give you a walkthrough of how one way you can get into half-lotus. Now I will say that there's so many ways to get into half-lotus, and they're all right if they work for you. So it's good to have a big bag of tricks with half-lotus, and that way if you have lots of options, you can try several different options and find the way that really helps you access your hips most effectively. So Julian's going to stretch out his legs, and with his breath, he's just going to work into half-lotus the way that he used to do it in Mysore a long time ago. Nowadays, he probably doesn't have to do quite all these steps. He could probably just take his leg and receive it in. But at that time, this was one method for him to work into half-lotus without feeling sensation in the knee, but really accessing the hip. So I'm going to break it down now. Julian's going to re-stretch his leg out. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to, go ahead, grab onto his toe, almost like he's doing Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana. He can also just grab his foot. I've seen him sometimes just grab his foot. And he's going to bend the leg straight in. The important part is as he bends it, take a look at his right hand. It's creating a subtle external rotation, which is sort of planting that seed. The other interesting thing is Julian's leg is as vertical as he can make it, and his toe, as you notice, he just pointed it down. Does it have to be pointed? No, it's kind of what works, but by pointing it or flexing it, you're adding a bit of integrity into the pose. You're not letting the ankle be limp. It's really important to notice the seal here. From here, I'm just working the hip into the socket, giving him that nice external rotation. Now, once people arrive in this place, they're in the half-lotus, it's important to think of a few things. Julian might be trying to press his leg to the floor. I always instruct people almost to do the opposite. I'm going to imagine that there's 3 threads, not even strings, but 3 threads attached right here, and that we're pulling them up. So his leg is going to lift maybe a millimeter. So it's a subtle movement up and a subtle gathering in. Another way to help if knees are an issue is to create a bit of resistance between the 2 toes, the first toe and the second toe. So if I put my fingers in here, you can see that the toe is strong. Julian's not letting everything go and collapsing. He's holding this line up. And then from there, he can do a million things with his half-lotus. He could go around and bind, he could do a marichi, but this is the beginning of the setup for half-lotus. Should we try the other side? Okay. Another way to get into half-lotus that kind of shrinks down what Julian just did on the first side. So the first side is sort of where he started, and this way he just takes the foot right in. Okay. Let me show that again and we'll slow it down. Okay. So instead of stretching the leg out, eventually as he became more open, he was able just to take away that extra step. Do you want to just show them the extra step? So he was able to take away the whole stretching up the leg and bending in. And instead, he could just, from here, bend in, straight in. And you'll again notice that the leg is straight. He's trying to seal the back of the leg to the sort of the hamstring area. And from there, he's going to take his arm in front, almost like he's doing a Marichyasana A. And he's, again, you saw how he moved his hip. Can you show that hip movement again? To come forward. So you can see that his hip is now what we're focusing on moving. If you take a look at his toes, they're naturally spread. He's creating a little bit of resistance between the big toe and the second toe. And from there, he receives, he's reaching under, which is important because if he pulls this way, he's actually kind of going away the natural movement of the hip. We're trying to get some rotations happening. There's some external rotation. So he's receiving under and drawing the leg in. The heel then draws nicely into the navel. And same thing, once he's in half lotus, rather than thinking of pressing the knee down, he's almost just creating the very most subtle, as if there's 3 threads, just lifting the leg maybe a millimeter. You should hardly see it lift, it's so subtle. And from there, he can move into any half lotus posture or full lotus that he'd like. In Julian's journey with half lotus, I think it took about 6 years till you were able to bind in Marichasana D. So much so that Sharat used to call him Mr. Marichasana D. And when he bound, in that course of that journey of those 6 years, you never had any knee injuries. No. It was just a slowly you take practice, day in, day out. And it's so important not to push. Just be patient. The body will open when the body's ready. So Julian's going to show us how he works into half lotus. Again, notice the hand creating that profound seed of rotation into the hip. He brings around, notice his toes. You can see they're strong, there's nothing slack. If you notice the ankle, it's not sickled. Many people, when they go into half lotus, will really pull on the ankle. You almost want to, and I think this is why Julian points his foot when he does it, keep it from sickling like this. This can put pressure on the outer part of the knee, so he keeps it strong. From here, he's going to again reach under. Notice he's reaching under, he's not pulling and holding over. And he draws into his full Padmasana. And I think this posture for him probably took about 6 years as well. But once those openings were made, those openings, because they were cultivated slowly, with awareness, with patience, they stayed. So enjoy the journey. For some people it's quicker, for some people it's slower, but it's not really about the time, because yoga is always teaching us. Just show up day in, day out on your mat and take practice. Always coming.